specifically gunshot. There is a video being made of this to be used on the club website. And if you guys need to sign off for your picture being published on Facebook or something, we can do that. Anybody that misses this or wants to be reminded of what we covered today, Anthony has offered to have additional classes at our club. We can also invite the rest of the membership depending on the number of people that are interested and so on. So, and Anthony, as does Dave, also is certified as an AED CPR instructor, right? Okay, so this is not basic first aid, it's specifically bleeding trauma. You'll see some things aren't covered here, but we can cover those with the people within the club that have a lot of experience, especially the ex-military. And I'm talking about things like chest seal, things like that. It won't be covered today, it's just the bleeding control. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Anthony and we'll be able to get out of here before the ice rescue team comes in for lunch. So.
Good morning, everybody. As she said, my name is Anthony Fry. I'm a member here at the Fire Department in Walpole. I'm a firefighter EMT. I just started my 20th year here. I'm also a CPR first aid instructor, and I'm also a stop the bleed instructor. By all means, I'm sure a lot of you guys have a lot more experience in some of this than I do. Hopefully not too much, because this isn't one we want experience with. But please jump in, help out, share your experiences with the group, and my goal is to get as much interaction with you guys as we can, because what we don't learn in the program, we can definitely learn through others' experience. So that's a huge thing. So jump in when you need to, and we'll get through it. This should take us about 20 minutes, half hour to get through the PowerPoint. And then we'll go down and we'll actually get on the mannequins. Those are supposed to be legs, I don't know. We'll go, we'll get into that. We'll get some hands-on stuff with the tourniquets. We'll share some website stuff and go from there. So, and again, jump in when you need to. So the Stop the Bleed program, it's a worldwide program now. There's instructors in almost every country in the world. Thousands and thousands of people are being trained in it. It's a layperson program, so if you have more experience, we're not trying to stupefy it, so to speak. It's meant for the general public. Produced by the American College of Surgeons, emergency physicians, EMTs in the Committee on Tactical Combat. This program is kind of put together with a group of people from the military, because the tourniquet has really become military-based. It's where it came from. That's where they started using it the most. Also, this program came about after the Sandy Hook shooting to get the general public in. Hopefully, more lives can be saved is their goal with this. Some of the images may be disturbing. They left that slide in. They took out all the good pictures. Number one cause of preventable death after injury is bleeding. If we can't control it and it's leaking, we're not going to do any good. You got to have the fluid to keep everything going. Where can you use this training? Pretty much anywhere. Natural disasters, motor vehicle accident. This is not just a gunshot class. Any severe bleeding, no matter what the cause, this training can come into play. So your goals are to identify and recognize life-threatening bleeding. A little bit of blood goes a long ways. You may see somebody says there's blood everywhere, and you don't even have a dirty napkin. Depending on the person's perspective, but our goal is to get you guys to know what life-threatening bleeding is about. And then number two, stop the bleed. Take the steps: pressure, packing, tourniquets, whatever else we cover today. As with anything in our training, no matter what we do, our safety is number one. If you are not safe, you're not providing a service. We say we're not in the business of trading lives. We all want to go home at night, no matter what the issue. If you are injured, you cannot help others. Help others only when it's safe for you to do so. If the situation changes or becomes unsafe, stop what you're doing, move yourself to safety, and if you can, take the victim with you. Like we said, we're not trading lives. Makes for good TV, doesn't make for good real life. If it's me and you that got to get out of there, and I'm the only one that can get myself to safety, sorry, but I'm going home tonight. And I know you guys would probably all agree to that. Unfortunately, that's a decision you may have to make someday. Wear your gloves if you can. Anybody providing first aid, that's one of the first things they do, you wear your proper BSI. If you get blood on you, be sure to clean it as soon as you can, any part of your body that you've touched. Tell a healthcare provider that you got blood on you and follow their direction. In the fire EMS world, we have a exposure reporting protocols and stuff. I don't know if you guys have that as a club. It's a good idea to always, with everything, no matter what, whether you got blood on you or not, wash your hands. And if soap and water, hot water, scrub your hands 30 seconds, a good thing no matter what. So ABCs, there's always ABCs. Every class you teach, there's the ABCs of it. Alert 911 as soon as you can. Little side note, like the CPR class, we don't yell out, hey, somebody called 911, point to somebody. You call 911, you go get the first aid kit. We say that because a lot of times people will, hey, somebody called 911, and everybody will either assume that nobody's done it, or 911 gets 35 calls for one spot, because everybody's got a cell phone and they want to call 911. So if you're in charge of the scene or whatever, you call 911, you go get the kit. So call 911, know where you are, follow instructions. Yes?
A lot of people suggest have two people call.
Okay.
You and one of them's gonna get hurt.
There you go. So know your location, know your address or where you are. They can ping your phone and get a general location sometimes, not always, so know your address. Follow instructions provided by them. They can walk you through almost every scenario that you have for a medical issue. They'll give you medical dispatch information over the phone. They can walk you through CPR, bleeding control, everything. Find the source of the bleeding. Look for continuous bleeding, look for large volume bleeding, pooling of blood. Continuous bleeding is something that just doesn't stop, obviously. Large volume, if you look down and that's spurting, you know, the arterial bleed where it actually squirts, and if you've never seen it, it does. I mean, you picture squeezing the bag and the stuff coming out, it'll spurt, it'll go across the room. Pooling of blood, if you look down and they're laying in a big puddle of blood, that's a lot of blood. There may be multiple places they're bleeding. Clothing may also hide life-threatening bleeding, if I can talk. Coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Multiple places the victim is bleeding. A lot of times people don't get shot just once, or they don't get stabbed just once, or whatever happens. So look at the whole scenario. The whole television thing, hey, he got shot in the chest, I gotta work on that, but you don't notice the other 3 holes. There's also an exit wound sometimes. Clothing may also hide life-threatening bleeding. If you can, expose the area. Because you may see a red spot here, but you don't notice the one here, down here, and down here. Open it up so you can see what you're working on if it's the right time to do so. So different areas for different types of severe bleeding. Obviously your arms and legs, neck, armpits, and groin, and the torso. We'll get into a little bit of the ways to treat the different areas. That's where you're going to get your most significant chance for severe bleeding. That pretty much covers the whole body, I know. But, you know, necks, arms, legs, that's all where your main arteries kind of go through. There are areas they go through, they're not as protected as others. The torso, all our vital organs are in there, right? So pressure, we get into it. We're going to take, I'll show you a video here in a second. So we'll take our leg. We got a little gunshot and an exit wound, which is usually bigger. We got a gash in there. Apply direct pressure to the wound. So if I've got a wound right here, I'm going to take the pressure, take both my hands and apply direct pressure. Hopefully it gets that stopped. If it's not a severe bleed, it'll slow it down or stop it, and you can keep it controlled there. Use just enough gauze or cloth to cover the injury. If pressure stops the bleeding, keep pressure on the wound until help arrives, until services arrive. The minute you let off that, chances are it's going to start bleeding again. she's gonna go, there is no sound. She finds the wound. They sell these shirts on the Stop the Bleed website. Another way to get 10 bucks out of you. They take just enough to cover, they put direct pressure on, it keeps direct pressure on the wound. And keep it there until help arrives. So the packing for large wounds, when the tourniquets don't come in. And this is not a product placement for it. It's what we use, it's what the Stop the Bleed program recommends. Quick clot, the chemically infused bandaging. There's a bunch of different brands of this stuff. We use Quick Clot because that's what we use. It's a branding. It's a Ford Chevy kind of battle. You know, whatever you guys use, whatever you're comfortable with, we use Quick Clot. So this will come in a compressed packet. There's actually 12 feet of this material in here. Pressure may not be effective for some large wounds. Like I said, there's like 12 feet in here. You didn't even jump for me, come on. So, that's all in that little packet, all compressed up. So what they'll say, if bleeding is from a deep wound, pack tightly into the wound until it stops the bleeding. Hold pressure until the help arrives. So if you hold your direct pressure on there and it's not working, you're actually going to take this stuff. You don't have to toss it out because you get it everywhere. You want to hold your pressure and actually go in the wound and do a hand over hand type because you're keeping your direct pressure in that wound. So you want to do that. Take some material, push it in. Take some more material, push it in. Until you've got that wound filled. I'm going to stop because this wound will actually take all 12 feet. Until you can't get any more in there and you're keeping that direct pressure, the blood reacts with the chemicals in there, it makes the clotting agent, hopefully it clots up for you. This stuff works great. As with anything, it doesn't always work. It's not a cure-all. Boom, it's packed, you're saved. It's the best effort we can do. So once you get all that stuff in there, kind of take that as the bandaging over it. Keep your direct pressure on until help arrives. Sure.
That's for puncture wounds and so on. How large a laceration can you pack into?
As big as you need. You know, you can use more than one. Obviously, we're not gonna fill an abdomen with it, kind of deal, because you need bags of it. But as long as, you know, a puncture or a stab wound or a huge laceration, you just can't get it controlled with direct pressure. Just get it in there. It clots up. It works really well. Pretty much as big as you can go. But like we said, sometimes it's just too much. You know, you may not be able to. And with any situation, you know, I hate to say we can't save everybody, but sometimes the damage is just too huge. You know, we're not gonna. You know, this stuff's just not gonna be enough.
Is it good to use that as any just kind of a bandage packing to cover pressure on something because it has the clotting agent in it? Or is it just for stuff you need to actually push it into?
I would say more, if you can just bandage it up with regular gauze, absolutely, because that stuff it is a chemical. It does get in the body, it does burn. You do not cauterize, but so to speak. The old stuff, the old Quick Clot originally was a powder. You dump it on the wound, it fizzed and everything else and made the clot for you. That powder is in this wound, so if you can cover it with just a regular gauze and not need that, if you don't have to pack the wound, don't pack the wound. I would just use regular gauze if that can cover it.
And you'll get soft tissue damage
Yes.
Oh,
around
okay.
all the muscles and everything, so use it in between. If you can use just direct pressure, go with the direct pressure, you'll get dirty, but you're trying to minimize the amount of damage around the wound because it literally will cauterize and burn the shit out of
Yes.
it.
Okay.
Don't be scared when you start screaming.
Yeah. And good point. This stuff is going to burn. It's going to cauterize. Keep it simple. If you can cover it with a Band-Aid, use a Band-Aid. You know, if you can use a couple pieces of gauze and some direct pressure, problem solved. That's a very severe, you know, a stab wound, a gunshot, a huge laceration you just can't get controlled, and different areas, which we'll get into in a minute on what works better kind of.
Bill, the other thing you do is if you have a lot left over, just take your shears and cut it, and then wrap it up with a gauze.
Yep.
That way you're not having it hanging all over the place and you know, just minimize the problems that you could have at the end, you know? So
Yeah, the newer stuff is not supposed to burn, it's supposed to heat up, but it doesn't burn.
Right. This stuff is, the quick clot stuff that you can buy, and most of the other stuff is dated now. It's good for about 4 years, and then it expires. So that's to eliminate that.
Will they discontinue the sponges? I have a couple of sponges.
They do,
Impregnated.
The sponges are off, kind of off the market now.
yeah,
Okay.
they're not really,
I use it.
they've kind of out with the old and with the new kind of deal. This is the latest and greatest. And then I'm sure, as with anything we do in this fire EMS world, in 5 years, that'll be the worst idea ever, and then in 5 more years, it'll be a good idea again.
It's hard to keep up with it if you live in your own little bubble and don't come to classes.
Yeah, and it's kind of like CPR. How many different times have you done CPR where this time it's 30 and 2? Last time we did it, it was 15 and 2. Then it was 5 to 1. Then if you're a kid, it's this. If you're an adult, it's this. Everything's about compressions. Now it's all about breathing. You know, it changes. They go back to what they did 20 years ago. Now it's a good idea again. So right now, the latest and greatest is the Quick Clot or a comparable brand, the medically infused gauze.
Is the quick clot, the shellfish based, or,
That I don't know.
well, one of them you can't use if you have a shellfish allergy.
I don't think
If there's shelf life on, they have to by law, they have to put a date on.
Some of the
They will
additives,
say expire.
But what about shellfish?
the shellfish will
Shellfish.
be chitosan.
They
Will
make-
say chitosan on it, and it has
Yeah.
not been proven to have people react to it, but because it's derived from shellfish, they recommend not to use it. So we go with the non-chitosan
And it's
wrap.
kind of like what we did with the sponges. They discovered that issue where they're just kind of pushing that aside and doing the chemically. They used to make a brand where the main product in it was shellfish. They dried up shells, put it in there, and it would work as a clotting agent as well. It was part of the composition. So, like we said, the top there shows you actually packing the wound. You're keeping the pressure, you're pushing it in, finger over finger, hand over hand to keep that pressure, but keep the gauze in until you fill up the wound. And like Dave said, if you get some extra stuff, make a little pad on the top and you can cut the rest of it off. If you can't, ball it up and keep it there, keep your direct pressure on. They demonstrate what I just did. So compress and packing works really good on the arms and legs if you can't use a tourniquet for some reason. We really recommend the tourniquet on your extremities. It works good, and the dangers of it are way less. We'll get into that in a little bit. Neck, armpits, and groin where a tourniquet can't go, or on the body where it can't go. Your packing is going to be your best answer for your severe bleeding. Actually had a police officer in the last class ask, well, why can't you put it around their neck? And I just laughed, and he had a big smile on him. And I said, okay, well, obviously it's going to work. It's going to stop the bleeding, he says. I said, yeah. I said, but we're trying to save lives. He says, well, what if it's my ex-wife? You're on your own, buddy. So again, the same areas. Body, mainly. This works really good on the body. If you have the gunshot, you can pack it. Again, always remember an exit wound where they said multiples, because of through and through, you'll have your 9mm hole in the front, and you got a 12 gauge on the back. So the exit wounds are always in that bullet it's not sharp like a knife. They push, you might hit them here and it come out here. Bullets rattle around, which is something else to consider for your injuries in your first aid, because bullets generally don't go straight through. They like to rattle around. So tourniquet, the fun stuff. Apply 2 to 3 inches above the wound. That works okay. It doesn't compress as well sometimes. For the class, I'll show you using just high arm. Don't place it over the elbow or knee. Don't go over your elbow or knee. It doesn't compress. It's not as effective. And then no matter what you're doing, you're going to be moving. It's not going to be as effective. Tighten the tourniquet until the bleeding stops. So you're going to put that on there. Tighten your tourniquet. Self-application or on somebody else. And you're going to tighten it until that bleeding stops. And you'll see, if I get a wound down here and I've got that applied, you're gonna see the bleeding slow down and stop. Still gonna look like a mess, but it's on there. So, anybody know how to check a pulse on a wrist? Nothing, huh? So, a couple twists, that's on there. You can still operate with it, so if you're self-applying, hey, I gotta go get help, put it on, you can go. I mean, I can still do anything I can do, wave at you, whatever, and it's on there. It does hurt. You know, tell your patient, hey, this is gonna hurt, but it's gonna help you. So that's on there, that's applied. Do not remove the tourniquet. Older classes, they used to tell you, hey, leave it on for so long, open it up a little bit, let it bleed out a bit. It'll keep the arm, for example, the arm will stay perfused, it'll stay, you know, stay alive. You're gonna try to keep it going. They don't say that anymore. They save 2 hours, 2 to 6 hours with this on. They're probably gonna save the limb below it if the damage is not too much. They used to tell you also that once the tourniquet's on, that they're, you know, you're writing that off, and that's not the case anymore in certain circumstances. If you're on the back of Mount whatever, and you're trying to come out, and you're 10, 12, 14 hours, yeah, you might lose the limb. But it's life over limb at that point, you know, it's better than the alternative.
They say anything greater than 6 hours is when your limbs start to lose all your functions, and that's when it's gonna happen, you're gonna have probably losing it.
So an important thing when you apply a tourniquet, says time. Write the time and date on the tourniquet if you can. Write it on the person. Military used to teach, write it across their forehead. And I had a class I taught a few years ago. I had a guy that was a flight medic for the military. They actually taught them in their curriculum, dip your finger in blood, write it across their forehead, 1640. T, 1640, so that the doctors and surgeons would know what time it went on, when it went on. That also helps them with their treatment, because when they're taking this off, they may push certain drugs because the blood below the tourniquet will become very acidic. So they'll know certain drugs to push to help alleviate that, to get rid of that. So tourniquets do hurt. It's very painful, especially when you're cut. Yes?
Can you put it on too tight?
There's no such thing as too tight.
No, right. No such thing as too
Go
tight.
until it either stops bleeding, or if you can't get it to stop after you think you can go so far, that's when you want to apply another one. But there's no such thing as too tight. You want to get that bleeding.
What's that?
That's your main control, is to get that bleeding
You
stopped.
haven't got it in the right place.
Yeah, and it's yeah, like you said, you're not going to be able to go too tight. You know, like they say, watch until the bleeding stops, and go from there. You can put it on over clothes. Again, the big puffy down jackets, maybe not. And we tell you don't work on what you can't see. But yeah, you can go over a shirt, you can go over a long sleeve shirt. You know, if you roll the flannel shirt up, you can go over that. A second tourniquet may be required to stop the bleeding. If you get this thing cranked on and you can't crank it anymore and they're still bleeding, take another one, put it on above the one you just put on. You may have, this is bleeding, not choking, okay? So, take that second tourniquet, go above that one, and tighten it on. Hopefully that'll help. You can pack a wound and put the tourniquets on if need be. Hopefully it's not that bad. These work really well. I'm going to show you the same thing I just did there. So you can see the difference in what these tourniquets do, just the 5 minutes I've worn it. I have no pulse in this arm right now, but you can see the difference in the 5 minutes I've worn it or so, how effective they are. Like I said, I have no pulse in this arm. The color difference. So they do work, and you know, they're simple. I mean, I show this, but look at the difference. And that's what, 5 minutes or so? So the different brands of tourniquets, there's a million, everybody got the tourniquet market. They want their cut of the money. Cat tourniquet, which is what we recommend, that's what this is. It's probably the most simple. You put it on, you cinch it down with a Velcro, you tighten the loop. You tighten the stick, which is also called a windlass. You can tighten it up, it locks in. Your Velcro holds it over. Place to write your time. write the time on it, note the time down. Again, if you have to, write it on the person's forehead. Write it on their arm with a Sharpie or whatever. We'll go over a kit that I like, I recommend. I also found the best deal on it, and I tried to purchase them for where I work. So, but there's many different companies. The Softy up there, that's pretty much the same idea as this one, except where you hook the windlass in is that little metal triangle on the bottom, and there's a loop up there, so you actually got to get the metal triangle to fold up over the loop, and it's more fine motor to, you know, whatever. If you're trying to do this to yourself, it's going to be pretty hard to flip that loop up, get it locked onto the windlass, and keep going. The Sam XT, it's just another company, their version of it. Kind of locks on like a belt, and then the windlass and the thing. The TX3, you put on, that's more like a ratchet, like a ratcheting system. Put it on, ratchet it up, and it closes. TMT, again, is kind of like a belt. You hook it through, the windlass spins and locks in. It's just a different brand. Again, like I said earlier, this one's a Ford, this one's a Chevy, that's a Toyota, whatever company you want to go through. And the RMT is another brand, same idea with the ratchet style. You get it on, you tighten it, you pull the ratchet. So they recommend these. Again, everybody goes with a CAT, the combat application. CAT is what the military uses, it's military developed. It's what they find the easiest for both self-application and on somebody else. The gentleman that taught my class for this, when I took the first class and became an instructor, he's the chief, the bureau chief of VMS, a guy named Justin Romanello from the state of New Hampshire. He's the chief of VMS for the state. He also, back 10, 15 years ago, he was a civilian combat medic. They would do contract work where they would actually go and work in the field as flight medics. He had a video, he had a helmet cam on his helmet where they flew in, did an extraction. They got into an incident there where a couple soldiers took an IED. One soldier lost his legs from mid-thigh down. They were both gone, pretty much hammered from there down. His buddy that was with him lost one leg, the same thing. The guy that lost both legs took a couple of his tourniquets, applied them to himself, rolled over to his buddy, applied the tourniquet to him. They loaded both of them in the helicopter, flew them out. They both lost limbs. They showed the helicopter from Justin's helmet cam after they loaded them in. Now mind you, they were missing from here down. There was not a drop of blood on the floor of that helicopter. And that was self-application, rolled over and helped his buddy. So that's how well they work. They do stop bleeding, and they stop bleeding very well. So bleeding control in children. The same tourniquets can be used on adults and children, except for the extremely young. For the infant or very small child, the tourniquet's too big. Direct pressure on the wounds usually work without the need of a tourniquet. It's very small, you can compress it and compress it well. All these tourniquets really do is fully compress that wound. They hold the direct pressure on that wound and they keep it there. With a child with a little bitty wrist or a little bitty arm, you can do that pressure yourself and pretty much take care of what the tourniquet's going to do. Large, deep wounds, wound packing can be done on anybody if needed, using the same exact techniques as what we did. Impaled objects, knives, sticks, whatever's impaled, we leave them in there. You know, we're not going to pack in the same wound. We'll keep it covered and hopefully get them out of there. Something's impaled in the arm, and you can go over it with a tourniquet, get out of the way of it. You can use a tourniquet on it if it's impaled, but do not remove that object. Improvised tourniquets. The first aid classes will teach you to use a triangular bandage, roll it up into a band about 2 inches. A lot of people say, well, I don't have a belt on. They work sometimes, they're not as effective as a tourniquet. Again, I get no money out of this, so. These tourniquets are about $30 a piece. Yes, they're single use, hopefully you don't ever have to use them. These don't expire. They're $30, and a lot of people go on Amazon, you'll see them for $10. Look for a better one because it's probably somebody's knockoff. There are companies that'll say, I'm selling a cat tourniquet for $10. They made you a counterfeit tourniquet. People, like I said, people are trying to get in on the monopoly. I have one of these in my range bag. I shoot it. I have a couple of these in my range bag. I got one of these kits, which we'll go over in a minute. It's good to have. I taught a class full of police officers here about a year ago. They were all, well, we've got them in the trunk of the cruiser. Well, that's great. Do you have the trunk of the cruiser when you're in the third floor of a building and you shoot somebody? Or you get shot? And he goes, well, yeah, just go out to the cruiser and get it. Not if you just take a round. You know, if you take a round of the femur, you're not running out to the cruiser and get it. I don't care how tough you are. Made our local PD, they bought cases, they each carry one on their belt now, which was a win for us, I think, in my book. You know, we changed their mind and we've got this figured out that, hey, we're doing it on, which really helped. Again, I keep them in my range bag. If you guys don't have them in your first aid kits at the range, I would definitely recommend it. You use it once, it's well worth it. So we went over the loss of an arm or a leg. Depending on the injury, it's a bunch of things. Depending on the injury, depending on the time involved, depending on what's gone on. They used to say, like we said, if you apply this, leg's gone, arm's gone. That's definitely not the case. Like we said earlier, 6 hours or so before it starts to actually kill the limb off or the extremity off. That time varies depending on the severity. And like we said, the injury caused to it may cause it as well. You know, you may have stopped the bleeding, but they've already done too much damage to the limb as well. So there are a lot of pain associated with it. Obviously, with a wound, the quick clot's gonna feel like it's burning. It's gonna, you know, the pain from the injury as well is huge. So to summarize it up, your personal safety is number one. Alert 911. Find your bleeding. Compress first. Compress with a tourniquet and or packing, depending on what you got to do, depending on the wound. Wait for help to arrive. Once you put compression on that, like some of the wounds up there, you put compression on that and you're holding it, keep it there. Don't look and see if it stopped because you're just going to start bleeding again. Any severe wound like that is not going to stop the bleeding. The quick clot may look like it stopped because it may do its job and clot everything up and stop the bleeding. Don't let that pressure off because that direct pressure is really what's doing most of the work for you. Especially with a tourniquet, don't take it off. Once it's on, it's on. The tourniquet and the quick clot, that's going to be removed on an operating room table because they're going to be there. They're going to be ready to do repairs. They're going to be ready to do what they got to do. That's taken off by the hospital. For more information, stopthebleed.org is a great website. It's who this curriculum's through. Great website. You can buy the kits. You can buy tourniquets through them. You can get the red t-shirt if you really want to have it. One of the kits that we have.
Yeah, just a quick question.
Yep.
If I understood you correctly, on an arm or a leg extremity, you would recommend going with a tourniquet before using a quick clot or stuffing the wound.
Usually, yes. They work better. It works really well. It's effective here. You know, like you saw, you put that on, you spin it on, the bleeding should stop.
Okay.
What it does is that's the direct pressure to the artery, so it'll stop. You know, if it can't let blood get to there, it's not going to bleed. By packing this stuff, it's still letting the blood go through and get there. And like you said, a couple inches above it, or up on the shoulder if you need to. That's the best way for an extremity, is with a tourniquet. It works the best, it's the most effective, it's the quickest working as well. So, did you?
Before we move on, I had brought you what they call a rat tourniquet that seems to be very controversial because it's so narrow, but it's recommended by them, the manufacturer, for children's and small women. Also, if you have any comments on Israeli bandages, I'd like to hear them because a lot of people in the room are ex-military and are familiar with those.
The rat tourniquet, like she said, recommended for small children, smaller people. Mostly, like this curriculum says, the smaller person you can usually use direct pressure and it works well. When we take our EMT class, the first aid class, if you're making an improvised tourniquet, they generally tell you to keep it a couple inches wide. It doesn't cut in as sharp. These work, they're their own market. I personally don't like them because they're so narrow and it cinches in on a certain spot. It will work. it will be effective. Not really me personally, it's not my choice, but they will work.
Does it cause the limb to have issues sooner, or what's the real trade-off?
I guess I don't really know the answer to that, with the thin tourniquet kind of
The
thing.
problem is that you've gotta wrap it multiple times to get that 2 to greater inch, width for it to work properly. The thing is, you can do it, but the problem is you wanna make sure that you keep, and that thing stretches. If I've got one here, and I'll tell you what, I played around with it, and it stretches, and it continues to stretch, and you're gonna be sitting there winding it, and it's like you said, look how thin it is compared to the regular tourniquet. So you have to make multiple
And you
wraps.
still end up making a
Yeah,
wide.
and it stretches, but honestly, it's a little more difficult to, hook it up afterwards, especially if you're kind of in a hurry, It's doable, it's probably good for a second. I would use it as a second device, I wouldn't use it as a primary, but if you have it,
I have one in the car in a second.
Could you add padding underneath?
And the other problem is, I also looked, is that if you hook it, you gotta make sure you hook it properly, because if you don't, it's gonna come undone. Whereas the cat, it clips into the little hook there, and then you take the Velcro piece over, and the windage will not unwind.
And, you look at simplicity, like he said, you're winding that around, you're cranking around, your anxiety's gonna be huge because of what you're dealing with. This is a life or death application, really. So the snare is gonna get you up, your heart's gonna be going, the adrenaline's gonna be kicked in. And you saw how easily I applied that to myself of boom, wind it around, and then you're on. One-handed. That thing you're gonna be,
The thing is, if you're trying to do that one-handed with this, you've gotta keep you gotta keep 3 fingers in what they call the 3-finger loop. So you've got one hand that's already married, and the other hand you're trying to wrap. It makes it difficult.
What's this?
It's a little loop that comes with it. It's already,
Oh,
the loop is already in it, so in order to basically apply it, you've gotta keep 3 fingers in there to keep it, so that it doesn't get tangled up. And then you gotta, so if you've got an engine arm and he's doing it by himself, okay, you're gonna be down here like this, right? And this is the one that's wrapping, what good is it gonna do?
No, that's that goes through that.
You can't.
Yeah, no, it goes
No, you
through.
can't. It's got that thing that tells you to stop. That's why this thing is right here, stop. You're not supposed to go through it.
Yeah, that's where it stops and you hold it and then you wrap from there. There's a lot of other application for it as well.
Yeah.
It's good, it's just good to have extra kit, splints, everything else. There's a lot of good applications. Obviously, you have the Cadillac and then you have the Fiat, but there's a lot more applications for that. I keep it with my kit. There's tons of different things you can use it for. Tourniquet, obviously, Cadillac, Fiat. So, but yeah,
What you gonna take
So-
that back or the other?
and again, like I said earlier, we talked about everybody's, I see some veterans in the group, I see some law enforcement, I see some fire EMS people, we see your general public. It's what you're the most familiar with, is what I'm getting at, right? Your experience with it, and it's a personal preference. How many people here have a Glock? How many people here think they're a boat anchor? There you go. I like the cat, he likes the rat. It's your personal preference and what works good for you, the simplicity. A lot of this is my opinion and the opinion of that, this curriculum, which is what I'm teaching. I like these. I have no experience with that. Until today, I have not even physically seen one of those in person.
So it sounds like it's better than nothing, but
Exactly.
we have another choice, and we all do, because our trauma kits contain the cat tourniquets. And we have other rubber stretch tourniquets
Yep.
and Israeli bandages.
Now,
So you don't have to use this, and it probably won't even be available to you. We have several donated to the club. Some people like them, some people don't, want to carry one with you. That's great. I often don't wear a belt. I have nothing else to use. I don't have an iPad. For me, especially if I can pat it before I wrap it or something, not on myself, obviously, from what they described, but, you know, somebody else. If it's better than nothing, it's better than nothing,
And then,
so.
like Dave said, they have their use, it's practical in some applications, sometimes it's not. He said he likes the cat better, but he reaches into his pocket and pulls one out.
Well,
Yeah.
I made him look at that.
Yeah, no, and they're good for their use, and again, it's your personal preference. I have to teach what the curriculum says, what we use, it's what I'm the most familiar with. So there's some disadvantages to this as well. So it's kind of a personal preference, what works better for you. These work better for self-application. And these will work better for everything. You know, that'll work great if you're applying it to somebody else, probably more difficult to self-apply. But if, like you said, you have the experience with it, you're familiar with it, it's a great tool. It's not a wrong answer by any means. So, again, stopthebleed.org. They have some great videos on there, great information, pretty much all this information plus a little more. One kit I recommend, me personally, this kit right here, if you don't have them in your, you know, for personal use, or like at the range, you guys get your first aid kits there and stuff. This kit right here is about $70. It's got, this is the basic, what's that? Stopthebleed.org sells them. I've priced them out online. I just purchased a bunch of these for where I work. I run the rescue team up at Wheeling Engineering up in Charlestown. We bought one of these kits for every AED cabinet that we have up there around the company has one of these kits in it now. They're about $69 a piece, and it comes with a tourniquet, pair of gloves, the package of quick cloth, which that's how the package of quick cloth is come. That's that compressed thing with 12 feet of bandage in it. Comes with a trauma dressing, so you can wrap it up afterwards to keep the direct pressure on. So once you keep your pressure on, you can wrap that wound really tight. That'll apply that pressure to it. And it comes with a Sharpie to write that date and time on there. It also comes with the instructional booklet if somebody needs it. Some people will do great in a class and the practical application comes along and they panic, so it's got the instructional booklet in it as well. But you look online, I recommend this kit for this reason. I priced them out through a bunch of different companies trying to find the best deal. You look online, $30, $42.99. You're already over the price of the kit. Then you get the other stuff. And, you know, you've got a $100 kit here for $70. They come just like this, sealed in this bag, so if you want to throw it in your first aid kit, a lot of companies will buy them, they come with a little zip-up pouch outside of it. You wall mount them beside your EDs, you put them wherever, you throw it in your range bag, and it's a sealed kit right there. It's, for the money, you're not going to get a better deal. And that's available through stopthebleed.org. They sell them on their websites. You can also buy bigger kits or smaller kits depending on what you guys are looking for.
And is that the same tourniquet you just demonstrated?
Yes. They have the blue tourniquets, and the blue packaging is to signify training supplies. Orange or black is usually the actual, I mean, these will work, they're still tourniquets, but the blue is to signify training because we use them over and over and over. So, what do you guys got for me so far before we get into the hands-on? Yeah?
The only time I've ever had to stop bleeding that was really severe, your patient is watching you for a reaction. So if you walk in and you take a look and the first thing you say is, holy crap, you know, you're gonna jack them right up. So you really need to stop and work on appearing to be fairly calm. And even if you're not, you need to calm yourself down so that they don't feed off of your panic.
Right. That's a little thing we sometimes call psychological first aid, where if you can bullshit them to thinking that you've got this under control, and inside you might be going, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, you know. One thing, like, as an EMT, we're taught to come in, get down to the patient. Hi, my name's Anthony, I'm an EMT with the fire department. I'm here to help you. You know, let's take care of this, we'll get you taken care of, we'll do the best we can. Just the reassurance of, hey, this guy's here, he's got some training, he knows what to do. So for you guys, hey, you know, I'm Steve. I I took the first aid class, I took the Stop the Bleed program, and we kind of know what we know what we're doing here, let me help you. You know, I can help you. This gentleman here told me that the first thing the lady said to him when he was getting treatment is, hey, I was a Navy corpsman for many years. I've worked on this. I know how to help you. Let me help you. And he told me this morning that was, all right, she's got her stuff together. Let's do this. And that was reassurance of exactly what you're saying is, I'm sure of myself. You know, and a lot of times you'll be helping a complete stranger. You know, you guys helping each other, you may trust him with your life and vice versa. You know, you may run up to somebody in a car accident, hey, I'm here to help you. You know, I know this stuff, I've received training. Just the reassurance of, hey, this person's trained, they know what they're doing is huge. So.
You still have to get their permission if they're conscious.
You should. You know, and that's where you throw it, hey, can I help you? You know, I've got training in this. I've got training in this, can I give you a hand? Most people will say yes. And if they say, no, you ain't touching me, I'm waiting for a doctor. Okay.
Wait for them to pass out.
That's exactly, wait for them to pass out, or hopefully somebody else will get there that'll help them. So,
There are blood thinners sometimes, you know, not so serious injuries will just not stop bleeding like that. You know, I've had issues with bloody noses in cold weather where
Yep.
it just would not stop. I've never a huge amount of blood for an inconsequential
Right.
cause. So don't do the tourniquet on that.
yeah, right, yeah, tourniquets don't work for nosebleeds. And how we get around that, the blood thinners, absolutely, people bleed like mad, head wounds bleed like mad. The tourniquet or the quick clot is helping to take away the ability to bleed. You know, you get your garden hose sitting there, you want the water to stop running, but you can't shut the faucet off, you kink the hose. It's exactly what this tourniquet does, is it kinks the hose. And same with quick clot, hopefully plugs the hole. So,
We were joking before about the tourniquet around the neck,
Yeah.
and I've been an EMT since 1973. You see the tourniquet come in, tourniquet go out, and every time we talk about it, we joke about the tourniquet around the neck. And I joked about it and said, never had an answer to it until about a year ago. I went to an active shooter drill, and military people came in, and this is a technique that they use. That obviously, if you're shot in the trachea or the esophagus, there's not much we can do. But with the carotid artery bleeding, which I've had one bleed out on me, and I've seen it go blip, blip, blip. And that was years ago, and I didn't know what to do. Well, after 35 years in the business, finally there was a very simple answer, and I'll just get your opinion, was you're putting direct pressure, and then they just simply take the other arm, put it up here, and wrap around, protecting the carotid artery on the good side, but keeping pressure on this side. And you can pull it tight. Now, how tight? To stop the bleeding. The alternative is for them to bleed out. But this is going to protect and free your hands up. And you can just use direct pressure or a tourniquet to hold it. Free your hands up while holding good pressure here and protecting your carotid arteries on this side, so you'll have some blood flow to the brain. Like we always joked about the tourniquet around the neck. And then I'm sitting in the class and just see the professionals say that, and I'm like, oh my God, something so obvious that I missed for so many years.
and in that type of application, you're not using it as a tourniquet, it's more like a strap.
Right.
I've actually never heard of that application for it. It makes sense. It does, you know, it would free you up. But that would be a case where you're using it more as a strap. It's a tool
Right.
to use. You know, your belt would work just fine, or a cravat or whatever would
Right.
work for that as well.
Yeah.
But for like you said, the carotid side, we'll put, you know, you keep your direct pressure on it, keep the pressure there, and hopefully help gets there soon.
And again, you know, and I'm just applying it to the range. If you and I are out there shooting and I do something stupid and it comes back and I don't have cell phone service and I gotta hold you there, I can apply a tourniquet, leave you, go for help, you know, or if I don't have my cell phone, a lot of times I won't shoot with the cell phone. Leave you there, tourniquet here, and pressure here, if it unfortunately happens to be, you know, the side now, not the throat. We, won't get into there, we're done, we know that.
And also, building on what Bill said earlier, the aftermath of an incident where you're trying to help someone, you know, not to die, it's not your fault if it doesn't go well in the end. You are being trained to do everything you can without going to a further EMT level or, you know, medical training. We're trying to help people do what they can until the full medical equipment arrives and so on. So do what you can, but that's all you can do. You know, there's a psychological aspect of the aftermath, just as there is with anything, you know, self-defense shooting and things like that, that will, you know, may haunt you or whatever. Do what you can at the moment. The rest will be taken care of by professionals that are trained much greater, to a much greater level than we will be in most cases.
Keep in mind when the professionals get there, we may use you as well. Hey, keep pressure on that, hold this, do that, you know, whatever. We're gonna use you if we need the help to get us there. Same with the CPR class. Hey, you're doing a good job on compression, stay right there. Yep.
Well, if you got a neck wound, that would be a pressure dressing, not a tourniquet.
Right.
Because if this is cut, you might as well kiss it.
And that's,
So you just have a guy, if he's conscious, he can put the pressure on with his hand.
Yep.
You don't need to wrap them all up.
and that's a perfect, that's a case of like, where we're, on the EMS level, we prepare for transport, we transport, and we do the continuing care. You guys were your first response, so to speak, you're getting the pressure hold. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, hold this bandage there, I gotta do this. You take your arm, hold it right here. Okay, now hold that bandage up here while I do this. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Yes?
It may seem obvious, but I'd just like to ask
Sure.
a question about entrance and exit wounds.
Yep.
If there is an exit wound, is that the one you address first and then the entrance wound? Because obviously you've got to apply pressure to both and at some point.
I don't think there's a wrong answer.
Okay.
One's-
And it probably would be whichever one is presenting, you know,
Right.
evidence of the worst bleeding.
If
first.
this one's,
Bleeding first,
you know, if this,
or biggest hole first.
Yeah.
if this is just gurgling,
Yeah.
you know, this is to signify your entrance wound, and this is spraying, you got more of a problem here than here.
Right.
There's really, you know, whatever is the more severe injury, we're always taught to treat the most severe injury first.
Right.
You know, you may have a broken arm, which is pretty severe in a lot of people's eyes, but you got a hole like this in your back, I'm worried about your back, your arm will either peel or it won't. So, life over limb kind of deal. So whatever's the more severe injury, treat that first. You know, if it's leaking and whatever, and you gotta plug it up, you know, whether you put pressure here, you put pressure here, you may have somebody where, hey, you take his arm, you take his leg, you know, you work on the other arm, and you're all working together as a group, but as long as that, the most severe injury, you know, the most severe life threat is being treated first, absolutely. So, yep.
Is there any useful way to generalize, just in terms of what should people be thinking about seeing in your experience in real life? What is it you can mentally try and prepare for? What is it you would maybe likely statistically encounter that you can actually help, would actually be able to help?
So it's hard to, every scenario is different. Like we said, treat your life threats first. We've had, you know, we've rolled up on patients that had this, that were dead. I had a patient that shot himself with a 12 gauge in his mouth, out through the top of his head. He could follow voice commands. Squeeze my hand. I mean, you could have put your coffee cup inside the hole in the top of his head. He had a hole in the top of his head this big around. Hey, squeeze my hand, squeeze my hand. The guy could do it. You know, and it's really a case by case. You want to look for your life threats. You know, if I got a hole here and here, you know, vital organs, you know, whatever, treat those first. You know, and you may look at somebody that's full of holes, and okay, here's my vital organs, here's everything. I got to stop the severe bleedings because I want to stop the leaking first, as obviously stop the bleeding, and then go from there. You know, is that kind of where you're?
Like, what could you realistically encounter? I mean, there's a million ways someone could, you know, start bleeding.
Right.
But what do you actually see on a day-to-day basis as a firefighter?
The shootings and stuff are few and far between, thankfully, in Walpole especially. I worked for Golden Cross over in Bellows Falls for a few years where we covered 9 communities. The shootings are few and far between. I've dealt with 4 or 5 shootings in 20 years myself. Mostly self-inflicted, a couple others that weren't. The severe lacerations, the severe cuts, stab wounds, unintentionally and intentionally, those are a lot more injuries than intentionals. Again, you have them so many, there's a couple things like in a career of fire and EMS, where you may get 1 or 2 of these things in your career. You may deal with, like I work in a factory. You know, I work in a factory where you got a machine shop, you got molding, you know, you get burns up there, you get stuff. I deal with injuries up there all the time with severe cuts, severe, you know, we had one of the molds where you stick your hand in to take the part out and then it starts again. There's an eye sensor, a girl stuck her hand in the mold, closed on her hand.
Oh, God.
We deal with stuff like that more often than not, but it's the situation. Hopefully, you're gonna deal with more cuts and lacerations and stuff like that. Like I said, the gunshots, and in my 20 years of being here, I've dealt with like 3 gunshots here. The other side of the river where I worked, we did, you know, 2 or 3 more over there over 20 years. You know, you're in Chicago, that's what you do is gunshots. You know, you guys see the statistics.
Studies have proven over the years that, especially when it comes to suicidal gunshots, okay? People like, okay, if I tell you I'm gonna commit suicide, they're likely not going to, because the attention part of it, the people that don't speak or anything are the ones that will do it. They said about 85 to 90% of the time, people who have tried to do suicide by guns have failed because they get scared at the last minute. So to kind of answer your question, in your mind, be cautious, because like he said, okay, and I've had it happen too. I had a kid barricaded at the day's end, okay, and he shot himself with a bird shot here and blew half of this out, and it took us about an hour to get into the room. He was still alive, okay. So in mine, they're gonna freak out at the last minute, and that's when they're gonna do most of the damage. And the ones that do are the ones that aren't gonna say, they're just gonna go do it, and, you know. So just keep that in mind, that anything's possible. Like he said, every call is different, okay? So most likely, if they succeed, you'll know. But it's a pretty high percentage when they fail to do what they think they want to do.
And is it fair to say that where we live, it's more likely some guy with a power tool and a bad day that...
It's the accidents.
Chainsaw or,
Yeah, it's the accidents, you know? Like he said, around here, you know, you see more stabbings or lacerations, which, again, all it takes is, I had one, I worked for Troy Police also, but we had one 2 months ago. A guy got mad at his girlfriend, put his arm through a plate glass window, and I ended up using 2 tourniquets. Okay, because he cut basically the AC up through here and then right underneath his bicep. And so it's little stuff like that, you know, can make it or break it.
We applied a tourniquet this summer here in town to a kid working at his in-law's house. He's kneeling on the porch with a razor knife, a sheetrock knife, cutting something off, cutting a box up. Hand slips, he drives it right on the inside of his knee, and bled like a stuck pig. We applied the tourniquet around his thigh, and it stopped the bleeding, and it worked very well.
Just have the mentality of going in that it could be bad.
Plan for the worst and
If
hope
you
for the
plan
best.
for the worst, exactly, you know, then it's not gonna catch you by surprise.
This kind of training can be used for any application. You know, think about, where I know that we've had a major incident at the range, but, you know, think about your kid falls off, breaks something, compound fracture. I mean, these are all stop the bleed type of things, where 90% of it is what you're gonna use in real life. You're gonna come across car accident, motorcycle accident, you know, tourniquet, you don't have, you know, I don't wear a belt that I can use as a tourniquet, so I carry a tourniquet. You know, it's that being prepared and knowing how to do it. You know, that's what this is all about, in any scenario. So you can apply it to whatever situation. Most of the time, it's gonna be a car accident, you know, either yourself or somebody else. That's gonna be more likely scenario than anybody getting shot. But, you know, it's, you know, they happen 15 times a day, you know.
That's why it's called stop the bleed, not stop the gunshots.
Are there fewer soft tissue injuries in cars these days because of the airbags? Because they used to be, people would put their
could wrap yourself up in bubble wrap and travel around inside a hamster ball. It's gonna hurt, it's gonna happen. Airbags do great, seatbelts do great. You know, how many people carry a knife in their pocket? Okay, how many people have cut themselves with that same very knife? Most everybody's hand went back up. You know, and we try to, it's stop the bleed because it's for any kind of bleeding. Like we said, generally it's gonna be a bleeding injury, hopefully it won't be a gunshot, those are few and far between things.
Do you say that hopefully because they're more likely to end in that victim dying?
No, I say hopefully because thankfully not a lot of people get shot. You know, you see it all, like we said, here in Walpole, here in Keene, here in wherever you're from, you know, you get more cuts. You know, we're not like Chicago where they have 36 shootings in a 12-hour period. You know, we live in the right area for that kind of thing. You know, if we were in Chicago right now, usually because that's what you always see on the news. We'd be dealing with gunshots all the time. It happens every day. You know, a day goes by without a gunshot, it's made a holiday. Because everybody shoots everybody in Chicago. In the gun-free zone too. So,
Maybe like me, I've got more scar probably on my head than anywhere else in my body.
welcome to the club.
Yeah, same here, yeah.
You know? Yep.
One of the things that I remember everything that happened. And when it happened, I knew I was in trouble, and I sat down, and right off, Jack came over and he says, "Give me a hand." And he says, "Squeeze my hand." And every time I'd start to slack up, he'd holler at me, squeeze his hand. And then he said to somebody, "Call 911, tell them there's been an accident, do not tell them there's been a gunshot." Because right off, you'd be looking at SWAT and everything else, and police. But he said, and he repeated that 3 or 4 times. Tell them there's been an accident and tell them where we are. And every time I'd slack off, jerk my arm, he'd say, "Squeeze my hand." And he did that till Lynn showed up.
Yeah.
And then he, I mean, that was very prominent that you kept doing, is having me squeeze his hand.
So that kind of goes along with the psychological part of it of, hey, stay with me, you know, keep them awake, keep them conscious. It gave you the reassurance that somebody's here. It also kept you awake because he felt just slacking off. Hey, wake up, stay with me, buddy.
But he also did me a favor.
Yeah.
I said, "Linda's coming up for lunch, I don't want her to see me, keep her away from me."
Yeah.
Because I didn't really fussing over me.
And as far as the tell them there's an accident, don't say there's a shooting. I get it. I wouldn't recommend it. Because as a responder, hey, there's been an accident. Okay, did somebody trip and stub their toe? Or is part of them over here and the other part over there? You know, that was
Bob, the thing on that is you gotta be as descriptive as you can, because, you know, people react different when you're talking on the phone with 911, and 911 can actually be a pain in the ass, honestly, okay? So, if you're saying that there's an accident, they're gonna ask you multiple questions, okay? If they're saying there was a gunshot, you know, if someone has the mind say it was accidental, whatever, they don't know, but they've got to be prepared whether you've got SWAT coming or not, okay? Because a lot of times what's happened is, as part is that if there's a gunshot wound, okay, whether it was self-inflicted or done purposely or whatever, EMS is not coming in until that scene's cleared.
exactly.
Okay, so because if you go rushing in and all of a sudden there's a guy still, whether it's an active shooter or not, and people might not know, okay, you're actually getting into trouble by going in, okay, so I'm saying, you gotta be clear to 911 or whoever you're calling on the phone. And as much as it, you know, people think and react different under, you know, stressful situations, but like Corey said, I highly would not recommend, not just, you need to be clear with what's going on.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And it's, like he said, you're gonna get the cavalry. You know, the minute you say gunshot, you're getting the cavalry no matter what. Whether it's an accident, whether it's, I just shot him and I'm waiting for you. You know, and for that reason, like you said, you don't know what you're coming into. Hey, are you on the phone with 911? Tell them it's an accident. You know, I used to work for Keene Dispatch, Keene Mutual Aid Dispatch. Take the call all the time of, hey, there's been a shooting. Okay, what happened? You know, I was working on my gun, it went off, and I hit my friend. You know, we had an incident in Walpole, accidental gunshot wound to the head is how they dispatched it. The accidental gunshot wound to the head was somebody who had been drinking, messing around with his buddy, took the gun out of the holster, stuck it to the back of his head and pulled the trigger.
Oh, jeez.
Pow! I thought it was unloaded. He's doing 25 years. Total accidental gunshot wound to the head, he's serving 25 years. That happened in town.
It goes back to, Bob, being safe for yourself. Your priority is, as a first responder, is being safe. You wanna go home, okay? So, a lot of times what they're doing now, you can act like being a dispatcher, like you said, you know, we made it clear that a clean fire, even if it was a domestic or a possible drug overdose, we don't even go in until the police clear the scene. Okay, because you don't know, if someone is, you know, drug overdose and he's got a weapon with him, you don't know that, okay? So be as clear as you can be. The more information they got, the better off you're gonna be, okay?
And it also helps us prepare, as, like if we're responding for an accident, what's the accident? It also knows if we're rolling up as EMS, hey, we got a gunshot wound, we know we gotta get things going. Dispatch is also preparing of, hey, we got a gunshot wound, dispatcher might be calling for a helicopter, he might be alerting the hospital, he might be doing all this stuff, which is why 911 and your emergency dispatch wants as much information as you can give them. And they'll ask you. So, yeah.
We only have about 15 minutes left before the other crew comes through, so anybody that wants to get some hands-on training, let's get through that. Whoever cannot because of the time constraint, we'll make sure you get it at the clubhouse.
And we're,
People here, so.
you know, we've got time, they're not due back until about 12:30.
Okay.
But we can, if you guys wanna work for it, and they're coming back for lunch anyway, so we can get through some stuff. So we've got a couple of the dummies up here, the rubber ones, not you guys at the table.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, right. So we got a couple of mannequins up here with the quick clot dressing, the tourniquets. I ask that if you guys do try to put the tourniquet on yourself, don't go tight, especially if you're on a blood thinner or anything. If you're on any kind of blood thinner or anything, please don't try it.
Don't try the neck.
And then, yeah, no necks. And that includes like a daily aspirin. You just absolutely not try it in that case. But you can apply the tourniquets to the mannequin. You can pack these wounds, and these wounds will hold most of the material. So come on up and get a couple of people on each, and I can answer more questions if you want.
Hey, how are you?
I wanted to let you know, thanks for the offer on the slide. I'm gonna pass on that one out, but right now it's not a good time, I should be spending an extra $400 to put an optic on. Oh, yeah, that's cool, no problem at all. I wanted to let you know about that. And thanks for inviting me over. Yeah, absolutely, anytime. Oh, I stole some. Staying busy? I didn't get to say hi to you yesterday. There was a lot of chat. Yeah, it was pretty quiet.
Yeah, you can feel it.
A handful of people.
And this is your, right here, where you're in
Are you, underwear there like right now?
Which is where this matters, because they're gonna know, hey, that's been on their
It's a pellet gun.
No, I didn't make it out this year. Is there a place, useful place for the club you would want to make it? Yeah. And he said the department doesn't have Facebook yet, but he wants to start his own personal thing, and I don't know if it's a problem anywhere or
Basically, sitting over the door, it's open,